Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give it a couple minutes to let everyone in the room and get their audio working to make sure that everyone can hear us and see us. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Some people are still trickling in, but that's okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Tony Phelan. I am a program manager for MBA programs at Forte. I'm pleased to welcome you to Forte's Women Lead webinar series. Today, we're partnering with the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, and our webinar is titled Lessons from the Science of Motivation. Before we get started, I would like to share a little bit about Forte for those of you who may be new to the Women Lead series. Forte has been around for almost 20 years. Our community of motivated and inspiring women, 100,000 women and counting, is changing the balance of power in the workplace. So we open doors for women to reimagine what they can achieve in business, from launching their first job to advancing to the C-suite. Through business education, role models, professional networks, and leadership training, such as this one, Forte shows women how to build the credibility, skills, network, and confidence to thrive as leaders and change the status quo. We are delighted to host today's webinar in partnership with the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. I'm now going to turn the session over to Melissa Patterson, Director of Admissions and Marketing for the Executive MBA Program North America. She will share more about Booth before introducing our featured speaker. Melissa, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tony, for the introduction and for having Chicago Booth here today. We're thrilled to be here. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are, as Tony said, hosting this Women Lead webinar and are thrilled to welcome Professor Ayelet Fishbach today. Before I turn it over to her, though, and we launch into the session, I want to take a few minutes to cover two brief areas. One, an introduction to the Chicago Booth Executive MBA program, and two, an introduction of your speaker today. All right, first, a little bit about Chicago Booth to set the stage. We offer 4 paths to an MBA through 4 different programs. We have our full-time MBA program, our evening, weekend, and executive MBA programs. All programs include the same rigor, the same world-class faculty, and the same curriculum. That's a rare model for business schools in that all 4 programs are very closely aligned. Today I'm going to focus on the Executive MBA program, which is designed for mid to senior level working professionals like you who choose to continue in their career while at the same time pursuing an MBA. What makes the program unique? I wish I had all day to talk about this because there's many things I'd love to discuss. But in the essence of time, I'm going to highlight 3 specific areas. So the first area is our approach to learning. We call this the Chicago approach. It's rooted in data, fundamental disciplines, and rigor. The program will help you sharpen analytical skills and critical thinking by giving you tools and frameworks to define problems, to ask better questions, and to develop better solutions. The Chicago Booth Classroom is one of open discourse, where we like to say ideas compete, but people collaborate. And all our world-class faculty approach their classroom and teaching using this distinct approach to education. The second thing I'd love to highlight today is our global network. We're the only US-based executive MBA program with 3 permanent campuses on 3 continents. We have a campus, as you can see on the screen in front of you, in Chicago, London, and in Hong Kong. This is not a partnership model, but rather full booth programs at each of these campuses. You will spend time studying on all 3 campuses, and you'll be part of a global network of over 200 students residing from over 50 countries. It's a collaborative, supportive, and inspiring community. You'll learn from peers who will champion you each and every step of the way. The final thing I'd like to highlight today is our career and leadership support. It's an integral part of the program and highly customized to help our students develop confidence and leadership. You will dive deep into key behaviors and mindsets through our internally designed lead curriculum. You'll explore industries and functions through career focused clinics and sessions that connect you with alumni community. Finally, you'll reflect on your unique leadership needs through one on one executive coaching. All EMBA students are paired with a coach at the start of the program who they work with during their time as a student. And at Chicago Booth, our career coaching and career support is for life. All right, those are the three areas I wanted to highlight. So without any more delay, let's move on to the main event. When I talk about the many things that set Chicago Booth apart, I always mention our world-class faculty. Not only are they experts in their field, but they're also skilled teachers, as well as being approachable and available to their students. We're lucky to have one such faculty with us today. Ayelet Fishbach is a leading behavioral scientist who will be discussing her lessons from the science of motivation with us today. Ayelet Fishbach is the Jeffrey Breckenridge Keller Professor of Behavioral Science and Marketing at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, and she's also the author of Get It Done, Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. She studies social psychology, management, and consumer behavior. She has presented her research all over the world. Her research is regularly featured in the media, including the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Chicago Tribune, and NPR. She's the past president of the Society for the Study of Motivation and the International School of Cognition Network. She's an expert on motivation and decision making. Dr. Fishbach's groundbreaking research on human motivation has won the Society of Experimental Social Psychology's Best Dissertation Award, it's a mouthful, and Career Trajectory Award, and the Fulbright Educational Foundation Award. Ayelet, I will turn it over to you now, and I thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone that joined us. Let me share my slide. Thank you, Melissa, for the introduction. I was teaching in our executive program in London 2 weeks ago, and one of the students on my first day told me that she first met me in one of these events online, and it was really nice to reconnect. So if anybody on the call is taking my class in the future, please let me know. What I'm going to do is talk about my work on motivation. I am a motivation scientist other than being a booth faculty teaching management and marketing. I've been doing research in motivation for many years. And a couple of years ago, I wrote Get It Done. And as part of writing the book, I had to reorganize the knowledge. I was kind of feeling, well, there was like an explosion of knowledge about how to motivate yourself, how to motivate the people around you. How can I organize that? And the beautiful thing that happened is that as I was organizing the knowledge, I discovered a new framework. I discovered that all these motivation interventions that we study, they actually follow into 4 buckets. There are interventions that we use when we set a goal. Okay, there are interventions that we use when we sustain motivation. So we already know where we want to get, but we need to get from here to there. There are interventions that we use to navigate the multiple things that we want to achieve in our life. We never just want to achieve one goal. Some of our goals are in conflict. Sometimes it's a self-control conflict. Sometimes it's a dilemma of how do I prioritize the many things that I want to do. And then we design social support, and we really need those around us to support our goals and to work with us toward the things that we want to achieve our life. And this is the 4th bucket of motivation interventions. And so what I thought to do today is tell you a bit about the main principles that go into each of these 4 buckets. Hopefully also get you to share some of your insights in a few Zoom polls, and then leave enough time for a conversation, for some questions. Let me start with setting a goal. Okay, so I like to start with the example of Mount Everest because it's just such a wonderful goal that I hope you will not pursue because it's also dangerous for you to do that. But for mountaineers, getting to the top of Mount Everest, just to the summit here, is a highly motivating goal. And why? Well, first, it's a goal. It's not a chore. It's not something that you do because you want to achieve something else. Okay, it's not on the way to get somewhere. It's the thing itself. It has a clear target. Okay, you can see that the long line of people. If you made it all the way here to the summit, then you achieved the goal. Anywhere that's not quite here, you have not achieved your goal. There are high incentives. You get to be a hero of your community. Everybody will admire you. And you know what? If you have this goal, you don't really care so much about the incentives because it is an intrinsically motivating goal. You climb Mount Everest for the sake of climbing Mount Everest. Well, how do we use these principles for our more everyday, mundane goals? I started by saying that we encourage people to set goals, not means, okay, not a chore. Achieving a goal is exciting, completing the means is a chore, okay, and so we encourage people to set a goal such as getting a job instead of applying for a job, or getting a business degree instead of studying for a business degree, or buying a house instead of saving for that. One nice illustration of that principle comes from a study that I ran back then with my PhD student, Franklin Shaddy, now faculty at UCLA, where we auctioned our MBA students this book, Misbehaving, by my colleague and friend, Richard Thaler. And we had two conditions. That is, half of the people were bidding on the book, while the other half were bidding on a fancy Chicago Booth tote bag that contained the book. What we found is that the bids on the book alone were actually $11 higher than the bids on the tote bag that contained the book. Now, you actually have a better deal if you bid for the tote bag because the book is included, but people don't like to invest in means, okay? We don't like to pay for parking. We don't like to pay for gift wrapping. We don't like to pay for shipping. And we don't like to pay for a tote bag that will carry the book. We much rather invest our efforts in the goal itself. What else do we know about setting goals? Do goals, approach goals are so much better than avoidance goals, than do not goals. Dan Wagner showed that back in the 90s with his clever "Don't think of a white bear" task. We know it's very hard not to think about a white bear. It is much easier to think about a brown bear, if that is the goal that we set for ourselves. More realistically, it is much easier to focus on our current relationship than to try to suppress the thought about a previous romantic partner. It's really hard not to think about something. It's hard to pursue avoidance, do not goals, because they tend to bring to mind the thing that we are trying to avoid. It's also hard because we tend to react. Okay? When we are asked not to do something, it tends to be exactly the thing that we want to do. Even when we ask ourselves not to do something, it ends up being the thing that we actually want to do. There is a nice research by my previous colleague here, Chris Bryan, that use this tendency to psychologically rebel, okay? That is to want to do exactly the thing that you are not supposed to do for good, okay? And what he did in his clever study was convincing adolescents not to eat junk food by telling them that marketers want them to eat junk food, okay? So teenagers were learning information about how companies are trying to convince them to eat food that is not good for them. They read, for example, that if companies just let you choose what you and your body wanted to eat, they would make a lot less money. So food company executives get rich by coming up with new ways to trick our brains into eating more than our bodies want. And you see there is a way here of presenting like this guy is like someone that is trying to get you to do something that you might not want. And the result was that kids were eating less junk food. Back to avoidance goals, try not to set them for yourself unless what you're trying to create is some immediate, some urgent behavioral change. We know that do not goals seem more urgent. Okay, don't eat red meat sounds like you should stop eating red meat now. Okay, approach goals tend to be more of like do it when you get to it. Okay, so there is less urgency. Okay, start eating more green vegetables when you can. But approach goals tend to be better in the long run. There is more persistence. There is also more intrinsic motivation, and we are getting to it. Challenging goals, okay? Putting a number on your goal often helps. Here's a study by my colleagues here, Devin Pop, George Wu, and then several others that looked at the distribution of marathon running times in the US. They had almost 10 million running times. And what was interesting is that if you look at the distribution of these running times, it is not smooth. That is, there are many more people that finish a marathon just under 4 hours, so like 3 hours and 59 minutes, than just after 4 hours. That is 4 hours and let's say 1 minute. Now, what's going on here? Obviously, it's not easier to run a marathon in the lower time, okay? But a 4 hour is a very typical goal for marathon runners. So no one wants to go home and say, I finished the marathon in 4 hours and 1 minute. They're going to push themselves to be able to say, finish the marathon just under 4 hours. You see the same peak at 3:30 and at 4:30. I mean, it's not the same, but a similar peak. And you can get the idea that when you put a number, you really want to achieve that number. The number almost becomes a goal in itself. It's not about running, it's about running under 4 hours. But these numbers can be problematic. Okay, when we set these numbers for ourselves, well, sometimes we get confused about what is it that we are trying to achieve. We see that people that are trying to control their calorie consumption get sad when they cannot quite meet the number, and as a result disengage with the goals. So that could be a problem because the number, it's just a number. Okay, like it's much more important that you will eat healthily. We also see in management that when we set goals for employees, and particularly when we put a number on these goals, there could be some negative consequences. A famous example comes from Wells Fargo's great initiative, that is GR8 initiative. That was a few years ago when Wells Fargo was trying to convince their employees to open at least 8 financial products per customer. Okay, so it was an internal campaign for employees to sell more financial products. Turn out that most people don't need 8 financial products, and so the only way to meet the goal was by selling people products that they did not need and often were unaware that they are getting. All this to say is that when we put a number, it's motivating, it could be problematic. Let's think a bit about intrinsic motivation. I already mentioned before that approach goals are more intrinsically motivating. We are intrinsically motivated when pursuing the goal, pursuing the activity is an end in itself, okay? When doing it is part of what you are getting from doing it. I, it's like when you like your work, okay? The employee that by the end of the workday wishes she had a few more minutes to finish the task that she was working on is probably more intrinsically motivated than the employee that cannot wait to go home. Okay, part of the value of doing the work is from being able to be there in the moment and doing it. Intrinsic motivation is rarely complete. Like we go to work because we want to be compensated, okay, because we want to afford our lifestyle, because we want a promotion, and all these are extrinsic motivators. But we also go to work because we are intrinsically motivated, because we like being there. And it turned out that these variations in how intrinsically motivated we are matter more for persistence than the variations in extrinsic motivation. That is, if we're trying to predict who's going to stick to their New Year's resolutions, it's going to be the person who say that they are intrinsically motivated, that they enjoy what they do, that they value what they do as they are doing it. Caitlin Worley, now at Cornell, back then a PhD student here, found that in research in which we looked at New Year's resolutions, time spent at the gym, time spent studying, consumption of healthy foods, all these were better predicted by intrinsic than extrinsic motivation. I have a few Zoom polls for you. I wonder if that would be a good time to launch the first one. There are only a few questions there, so can I ask whoever is in charge of the polls to launch the first one? Here it goes. Okay, so just a couple of questions for you. Compared with the average person in this audience, how important it is for you to learn new things at work, and compared to this audience, how important it is for your job security and pay. And as people are answering, please don't take too much time. I would say that the first question is really about intrinsic motivation. How would you see yourself on intrinsic motivation compared to our audience here? How do you see yourself on extrinsic motivation? The second question compared with our audience here. And can we see the results once we now go to, okay, great. So look at the first question about intrinsic motivation. No one here thought that they care about intrinsic motivation less than the average person. The majority of the people said that they care about intrinsic motivation more than the average person. By the way, statistically, the average should be at the average. I hope you know that. Okay, and so it's a bias when we get more people saying that they care about intrinsic motivation more than the average person. But we see much less bias when we ask about pay and job security. Okay, here the majority says about the same. Okay, so most people say, yes, I'm like other people. And we start to see some people who say it's less important for me, and some people say that it's more important for them. This basically illustrates the bias in intrinsic motivation. We think that we care about intrinsic motivation more than others. We even think that our present self cares about intrinsic motivation more than our future self. Okay, so to illustrate my last point, in a very cute study, we asked people whether they would like to listen to Hey Jude by the Beatles or A Loud Alarm. No brainer, right? But more than 70% of the people chose the loud alarm because it paid 10% more. So people were telling us that when I think about my future self, the person who will have to do the task, I prioritize extrinsic motivation, pay over sound. But after they completed the task, most of the people who chose the loud alarm regretted their choice, whereas those who chose the music enjoy their choice. So I'm not recommending that you will always choose to listen to music instead of doing your job, although you can combine the two. I'm just illustrating that not only we think that other people care about intrinsic motivation less than we do, we also think that our future self will care about intrinsic motivation less than we actually end up caring about that. A word on incentive, and I could have an hour in incentive, so I'm not. I'm just going to say a couple of things. We need to be careful. We need to be careful when putting incentives for others, when putting incentives for ourselves. Here, just a historical reminder from the famous Hanoi rat massacre. Back at the beginning of the 20th century, French colonists created a bounty system that paid the residents of Hanoi 1 cent per each rat killed. The residents of Hanoi killed many rats, but you know what? They also started breeding rats because rats became a source of income. The Cobra effect was some years later named after a similar failed program in India, a bounty program to pay people for killing cobras, which ended up incentivizing people to first breed the snake so that they can kill it and get the money. So we want to be careful with incentives. In a study that I ran some years ago with Michal Maimeran at Northwestern, we found that kids as young as 3-year-old, when we gave them incentives, saw that something was fishy with the activity that is being incentivized. Specifically, we told them that eating carrots will help them count to 100. We told them the story about this girl who ate carrots and then she could count to 100. And then in another control condition, we don't tell them that carrots can help you learn how to count. And guess what? The kids that learn that eating carrots will help you learn how to count ate fewer carrots than the kids that never heard that there was some external incentives for eating these veggies. So be careful with incentives. Uncertain incentives tend to work better. Okay? Intermittent reinforcement refers to giving incentives sometimes and not always. Okay, so sometimes I'll praise your behavior. Other times there will not be much reinforcement. Challenge increases motivation, and so if we only incentivize sometimes, then there is some challenge. There is also some mystery. Okay, will I get the incentive? Okay, is this going to be the time when I get to get myself a nice cup of chai latte? Not knowing whether today will be the day is going to keep me motivated. Let me talk about sustaining motivation and what goes into helping people and ourselves getting from here to there. And the first principle that we want to keep in mind is that with progress, there is more motivation. Okay, so, half of the people that start college in the US will not finish a college degree, and they tend to drop out at the beginning, at the first year, and not in the last year. Okay, loyalty programs. Okay, many people start them, they drop them at the beginning. They don't drop them when they are just one purchase away from getting the reward. One reason is that you just get more for your effort. Okay, like your first year of college is getting you like 25% of a college degree. Your last year is getting you a full college degree. Another reason is that with progress, you feel that you are more committed, that you are more able. Okay? It is actually easier to do the second thing. Okay? It is more natural to engage with that loyalty program on the second and then third time. You might actually remember to present that card that gives you your points. So we become more committed. Okay, we become more able to adhere to the goal. But sometimes with progress, our motivation declines. Here I have an example of people going to the gym and they are using the escalator, which I thought was pretty funny because why would you do that? And then I remember that when I go to the gym, I try to find a parking spot that is very close to the door, which means that I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to exercise and I'm trying to minimize the number of feet that I will have to walk on the way to the gym. Well, sometimes when people feel that they are making progress, that's a reason for them to disengage. And this might be actually a good time to launch our second poll. So let's have that, our second Zoom poll, hopefully coming soon. Here it is. Think about a goal that you've accomplished, such as a college degree or running a marathon or a project at work, and just tell us quickly when were you more motivated, at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. And this is starting to give us some idea of whether people are motivated as they make progress, as opposed to at the beginning, which is when they don't have progress, getting motivated to start. Whenever we can see their results, I would love to see what we have. Great. So, as I expected, which means as we usually see, there are fewer people that are motivated in the middle. Okay, we see motivation high at the beginning when we start on something, we are enthusiastic, we want to get things done, and toward the end when we are about to finish. Let me close this. Back here. Specifically, we see that for novices, okay, and up to the midpoint, attention to the beginning, okay, thinking about the glass half full, thinking about how much I've done since I started, okay, increases motivation. However, for experts and beyond the midpoint, it's attention to what is still missing, okay, looking at the end, okay, looking at what I still need to do, that increases motivation. Let me skip this actually and say that either way, we have a problem in the middle. And we just saw it in our poll results. The majority of the people say that in the middle, this is when I lost my motivation. I was excited at the beginning. I was excited to finish something, but it was hard for me, in particular when middles are long. Here's a study that we ran in Israel with Rima Tillery, also was a PhD student here now at Northwestern. And if you're unfamiliar with the tradition of the Hanukkah holiday, then let me tell you, it's pretty simple. You only need to light the menorah on 8 consecutive nights. Okay, pretty simple. Just remember to do it every night, and you can say that you have celebrated the holiday. So we asked people that all observe the holiday whether they remember to light the candles. As you see, the majority of them did that on the first day. The majority of them did it on the last day. In the middle is when people were not quite adhering to the tradition. In another study, we found that people literally cut corners in the middle. We gave them a pair of scissors and a list of shapes that were on just a piece of paper, okay, like drawn on a piece of paper, and they had to cut these shapes, and they were cutting more corners in the middle as opposed to the first and the last cutting task. So what do? We try to keep middles short. Okay, we go for a monthly saving goal instead of an annual saving goal. Oh no, a retirement saving goal, which is really hard because it's kind of life between the beginning and the end. We go for a weekly exercise goal instead of a monthly exercise goal. Okay, a daily goal for what I want to achieve at work. The shorter the goals are, the less there is middle, and the more likely we are to stay motivated. Another challenge with sustaining motivation is learning from feedback, in particular negative feedback. There is a lot that we read about learning from negative feedback. Here you have the Serena Williams telling us that she has grown must not form victories by setbacks, that if winning is God's reward, then losing is how he teaches us. And the Supreme Court Justice, John Roberts, that basically is something that he said in a graduation speech. I wish you bad luck from time to time. And he told that to the graduates because he said that if they had bad luck, if they had failures, they have something to learn from. Well, what we find is that it's really hard to learn from negative feedback. And so, despite the fact that there is great information in negative feedback, our initial response is to ignore it and not learn. But there are solutions. Okay, we found that giving advice to another person after you had a setback helps you think about what you have learned, actually forces you to extract the lessons. We find that some cultures allow you to learn from negative feedback. They celebrate failure. Okay, that some companies now have evenings where they talk about things that did not work as planned. Recalling commitment and expertise, developing a growth mindset, Carol Dweck's work comes to mind, are things that help us learn from setbacks. And finally, distancing ourselves. Ethan Cross, a colleague who studies motivation, developed this way of helping people by having them reflect on their failures from a third person perspective. So instead of asking, why did I mess up? I need to ask, Ayelet, what happened? Why things did not go the way you planned, Ayelet? And that builds a healthy distance that allows us to learn from failures. Let me say a bit about multiple goals and how to navigate those. Before I say that, let me just say that the philosopher's advice is to just not have multiple goals. Okay, Kierkegaard famously advised people to just will one thing. Psychologists believe that this is impossible. Okay? You always want several things, and so the advice that we use is pick your battle. First thing is to decide whether you are trying to find a solution where you pursue all goals or you are trying to prioritize. You want to put one goal ahead of others. Okay. If you are looking for a compromise, you might want to strike a balance between, let's say, career and family. Okay. Or being an environmentalist where you're not spending too much money. If you are looking to prioritize, then you might decide to postpone starting a family because you want to focus on your career, okay? Or postpone your career because you want to be with your family, okay? You might decide that you prioritize your financial goals over being nice to the environment. When we think about prioritization, it's really a self-control problem. When we think about finding a compromise, we try to get everything together. We think about balancing, we think about compromising. Let me actually start with the compromise solution, okay, trying to get many things accomplished at the same time. We see that people often search for what we call equifinal means and multifinal means. Sounds complicated, it's not. Okay? Equifinal means serve a single goal. Okay, so you can think about your goal to be successful at work, and maybe you're going to get more education. Maybe you are going to go to a networking event. Maybe you are going to start working more hours. Okay, all these are ways to achieve the goal. And when you think about several ways in which you can achieve a goal, you become more confident that you can do it. Okay, more means more confidence. Multifinal means achieve several goals. And so if we can think about the equifinal means as all roads lead to Rome, okay, there are many ways to get to Rome. We think about multifinal means as feeding two birds with one stone. Okay? Basically, we can, with one activity, achieve several things. Okay? Maybe by getting education, we can advance our professional goals. We can advance ourselves as a person, just be more and more curious, develop ourselves as a people, and maybe we can create new relationships. Maybe we can have more friendships. Finding these means that allow you to serve multiple goals is often the key to achieve several goals. I said that there is also sometimes prioritization, and then we are in the domain of self-control. So much I can tell you about self-control, but I am not going to tell you that much. I'm going to mention that there are two challenges. One is identifying a conflict, seeing that there is a problem, and the other one is resolving the conflict, okay, doing something about it. So let's launch the third Zoom poll, which refers to self-control and identifying a conflict. Let's get that here. Okay, so I try to make them super short, but this one actually has 6 questions. As you answer them, you will see that there is some repetition, so it really should not take more than a moment. I would also say that every question here is something that I found that is quite common, that many people say that they will do it. And then the question that I ask you is, how likely are you to do it when you think about it just once? And then how likely are you to do any of like these 3 activities when you think about doing it 10 times this year? I don't quite see like how many people already responded. So whoever is doing the Zoom polls, if we have, we have some results. Okay, so let me look with you. Oh, how beautiful! So it's always fun for me when research findings replicate when you see data. And so, these are the same 3 behaviors, right? Covering meals for friends when traveling on a business trip, downloading copyrighted materials without paying, and taking home for personal use office supplies. Okay. And we see that many people would consider doing it just once. Okay. So 35% for the first question, 49% for the second question, and 73% for the third question. Now I'm asking you, would you do it 10 times this year? And people say, oh no. Okay, so only 6% say yes for the first question, only 16 for the second question, and only 24% for the third question. Remember, the third question, taking home office supplies, which is my personal offense, I must admit, is something that 70-something% of the people here say they will do one time, but only 24% say they will do on a regular basis. So what we see is that identifying a self-control problem is much easier, is much more likely if we think about doing it multiple times. Right? If we think about cheating on our diet every day this year, as opposed to just once. Okay, if we think about taking the not so great shortcut just once versus multiple times. Here's another example from Abby Sussman here from her research, showing that consumers were made aware of the number of times that they would like to buy champagne or go to the theater this year were willing to pay much less money. That is, were much more careful with their expenditure than if they considered making these purchases just once. So for all these exceptional expenses, when we are being reminded that it's not so exceptional, we are more careful with our spending. I would just say we call it the broad decision frame, and what I have on my slide here is basically the same as the Zoom poll. In terms of battling temptations, if you know about them in advance, it is easier. So to identify temptations, broad bucket, think about it multiple times. To battle the temptation, know that it's coming. Yeah, you know that the box is going to be heavy, you will lift it with more force. Okay? You know that it's going to be stressful in the office tomorrow, that there is a meeting that you are dreading. You are going to be more careful with what you say and better able to maintain your calm and the positive interaction in that meeting. So anticipate that in advance. Finally, I want to say a few things about social support. We do things with others and in the presence of others. Okay, we walk with others. This is the pulling the rope. We walk in the presence of others. This is as when we exercise. When walking with others, we see again that highlighting the glass half full, that is what others have already been doing. Okay, the amount of work that the group has done is good for novices. It's good if you are less committed. Highlighting what is still missing, what other people have not done, okay? What still needs to be done is better for those who are more committed, those who are already committed to help the group meet its goals. Here's that in a charity campaign. I will not get into the details, but I would say that telling people that other people have donated helps the newbies, the people who never gave money before, to give money. Telling people that we are still missing a lot of money is getting your donations from the regular donors. Others also support our individual goals. Okay, our electricity bill looks like this for a reason. Okay, we're trying to use conformity pressure, or actually our electricity company is trying to apply conformity pressure. And so they tell you how much electricity you spend compared with the efficient neighbor who's apparently better than you, and all neighbors, which for this specific individual are a little bit worse. There are many ways in which others influence how we pursue our goals and how they help us pursue our goals. I thought that instead of getting into the research there, I will just tell you one of my favorite stories. And this is the story of Marie and Pierre Curie, which you probably heard about the couple. Okay, they won Nobel Prizes in physics, but what you might not know is that their relationship also is a great example for the principles by which relationships support goals, not only romantic relationship, although that was the case for this couple, any relationship. So we connect to those who hold similar goals. Pierre and Paris bonded over their scientific interest. We help each other's goals. Pierre supported Marie's first Nobel Prize, okay, the one that they got together. He insisted that she will be named on it with him. The second one she won by herself. That was after he died. We pursue goals together. Marie and Pierre known for isolating polonium and radium together. And we hold goals for each other. And Marie and Pierre had two daughters. We know that they cared a lot about science education because the oldest, Iran, won her own Nobel Prize in chemistry. And as you may have guessed, with her husband. That's left one daughter with no Nobel Prize, and the poor woman actually married someone who won the Nobel Prize, which made the Curie family the family with by far the most Nobel Prizes than any other family ever. Okay, so this is for Get It Done. I was talking about setting a goal, sustaining motivation, how to address multiple goals, and how to design social support. I wrote a book about that. I have a website where I try to give a lot of information. I'm here at Booth if you ever decide to join us at the University of Chicago. And I'm also here happy to answer your questions now. So let me now get Melissa back on, stop sharing my slides, and maybe hear from you.
All right. I am here and thank you so much. I learned a ton myself, so I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us today. We do have a few questions in the Q&A box. I'll start with this one. How do you recommend finding a balance for keeping the middle short while still setting lofty and ambitious goals, such as Everest or retirement goal examples?
Yes, I love this question because clearly we need long-term goals. Like we need to save for retirement, okay? And we often have long-term goals at work and with our family and in life. And so long-term goals are necessary and they need to be there. They are not very motivating if we don't break them into sub-goals. And think about it in terms of what is the shortest sub goal that still makes sense to you, like saving for retirement. It doesn't make sense to have it as a daily goal. Okay, you can have a daily exercise goal. You cannot have a daily saving for retirement goal. But maybe it can be monthly. Okay, maybe it can be quarterly. Maybe it can be annually. The shortest that makes sense for you is the best in terms of not falling into the middle problem trap.
Great, thank you. Another question that just came into the Q&A box, which I love. I'm a chronic procrastinator. Any suggestions on getting started?
Yes, first stop calling yourself a chronic procrastinator. and, and I mean that. I think that we often think about motivation as a personality trait. Okay, like I have it or I don't have it. I'm a procrastinator or I'm like have a strong willpower. But when we look at the science, it's really about strategies and it's often about how you respond to your environment. So you are probably not in a good place in terms of the goals that you have set for yourself. It's possible that there are too many. It's possible that you haven't been seeing progress, which means that this is going to decrease your motivation. It's possible that they are not set correctly. There is something around you that needs to be changed. And I would really start by asking, like, in these four buckets, what is missing? Okay, are you missing a goal that makes sense? I mean, does this goal conflict with everything else that you need to do? Maybe you don't have social support. Okay, it's really hard to do something when the people around you think that that's foolish. Okay, what is missing? How do you change something around you? Let me also say one more thing about it, because it's a question that I get all the time, and I just need to get people to stop referring to personality when explaining motivation. Okay, I, it, it's really about the situation. It's really about how you set it. Think about getting up early in the morning. Most of us, me included, using an alarm. Okay, so if the alarm wasn't like going off, I would continue to sleep. Okay, I could have said that I'm like something wrong with me. Okay, like I can get up in the morning. I could also say, well, I just did not put the alarm like sufficiently far away from my hands, so I will have to get up. Okay, and changing the alarm is much better than beating myself for not being a good person that gets up when she should. So yes, Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, I think one of the other questions in the box was how do we bridge the gap between motivation and action? And I feel like you kind of just answered that one. That was really helpful. So I'll move on to another one, which is what are your thoughts on the sunk cost fallacy and how that relates to goal completion?
Yeah, that's so interesting. So the sunk cost fallacy refers to our tendency to do something only because we were doing it. Okay, so it's like when we wear this like extremely uncomfortable shoes because they cost a lot of money. Okay, and when it gets to goals, like we don't give up on a goal that we should really give up on it. Okay, there are better alternatives, but we were already working so much on it that it's hard to give up. Now, it's a fallacy when there are truly better alternatives. Okay, when you really should be doing something else, but it is also an adapting mechanism that allows us to stay committed when things are rough. Okay, and so like we don't give up on a relationship that we've been in for a while just because we had a bad week, okay, or a bad fight, and partially because of the sunk cost, right? Like I already invested so much, I might as well stay committed and hope that the things get better. And so the sunk cost fallacy is also an adaptive mechanism of commitment, but we want to be able to evaluate whether that's indeed the right goal. Okay, in my example, whether that's indeed a relationship that should be saved. I will also add that we see that there are two basic mindset in pursuing goals. There is the deliberation, and then there is the implementation. And in a way, sunk cost is when we implement. Okay, we decided that this is what we are going to do, and we're just going to go through it. And it makes sense, because once you set a goal, it makes sense to not deliberate so much and mainly implement. But of course, it doesn't make sense to go through life and never deliberate. And you kind of need to find the right balance for yourself, at which point you say, okay, well, get your foot off the gas pedal and think about whether you are driving in the right direction for you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. And this is a great one. It's kind of around the strategies that you mentioned. So the question is, how do we know if we should pursue the equifinal or the other strategy?
The equifinal or the multifinal, okay, which I know these are confusing concepts, but the equifinal is that all roads lead to Rome, and the multifinal is that the feeding two birds with one scone, and and both need to be there. Okay, it is beneficial to have several ways to reach a goal, which is basically like your plan B and your plan C and so on. Because the more ways you have, the more likely you are to be successful. It's your backup system, and the more confident you are. It's also really important, in particular when life is busy, when resources are limited, and for many of us, time is a resource that we never have enough. It's important to find activities that allow us to achieve several goals simultaneously. Okay, you cannot afford in your life to do it just for one goal. Okay, so try to combine. Okay, try to uh, achieve more with one activity, in particular when you don't have time, when you don't have physical resources or financial resources. That becomes more important.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think, Tony, I'm going to hand it back over to you because I think we're out of time.
Sounds great. Thank you all so much. I have one final slide that I just want to share here. All right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Fishbach and Melissa, for facilitating that Q&A. This was such a great session, and such applicable content to our daily lives. And so this was, I know I found it very interesting, and I hope the rest of the participants did as well. We did record the session, so this recording and all of our webinars can be found at our website, which is fortefoundation.org. So we thank everyone for attending today. We hope you enjoyed the webinar, and thank you for completing the evaluation that will come into your inboxes shortly. We look forward to having you join our Women Lead series in the future. And once again, thank you so much to the Booth School of Business for your partnership. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.